Here is Christian apologist and academic William Lane Craig explaining why he is a Christian.
My parents were at best nominal Christians, but we never attended church.
The classic narrative of a Christian apologist who wants to make us think that he doesn't believe in his God because his parents, teachers, and preachers told him to. Instead, he wants to create this image of him on the journey to finding the truth, which then, of course, led him to his Christianity. That kind of backstory, true or untrue, is totally irrelevant for the actual facts, if any, that led him to his Christian belief. So perhaps better cut to the chase and give us some good reasons to believe in your Christian God. That would be nice.
But when I became a teenager, I began to ask what I call the big questions in life. Who am I? Why am I here? What's the meaning of my existence?
And of course, you call those the big questions of life, but are they, really? Who am I? You're just a dude, and not even a special dude, like a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. No, just a dude like anyone else. Why would that be a big question? And why am I here? Because your parents made you, dude. You just told us about them. Oh, but that's not what you mean. You mean there must be some reason, some willful intent behind your existence. Dude, that of course is begging the question. As soon as you phrase that question, you already presuppose the existence of a God who created you with intention. So the questions, why am I here? What's the meaning of my existence? Those questions never lead you to believing in a God. It means you already believed in such a God in the first place. But you're just bad at disguising that this is a circular argument.
And as I looked at the universe, I could see no meaning to my existence. I knew that humanity would eventually perish in the heat death of the universe, and I could see no reason for its existence, for the existence of human beings, and in particular for my existence. And I simply faced an inevitable death in which I would cease to exist.
And that is precisely where you should have stopped that thought process, because for all we know, that's basically it. You just summed up what seems to be the reality of existence. And what is wrong with it? Why look any further? Just stop looking for stuff that we have no good reason to believe in, and go about with your life. Do good, interesting, and fun stuff. That would be totally okay and legitimate. It's such a silly cliche that your life somehow becomes more worthy and meaningful if you throw out some basically useless semi-intellectual questions now and then.
And so, for me, it was these big, deep, existential, philosophical questions.
Nah, that's just mumbo-jumbo. You just call them big, deep, existential, philosophical questions in order to pretend that you're talking about this really important big brain stuff. And all the while, you told us nothing that leads to good reasons to believe in the existence of your God.
That eventually, through the witness of a girl who sat in front of me in my high school German class, led me to faith in Christ.
Ah, you met a girl and she told you something. Why didn't you explain that earlier? Now I'm totally convinced that your God exists. Because when a girl tells you something, of course, you believe that that is true. Imagine all the time and energy that is wasted on scientific research, doing observations, collecting evidence, performing tests and measurements, while it's much easier to establish the truth by meeting a girl who tells you something.
And as a Christian, to finally get to your question, Justin, it's important for me to have a synoptic worldview. That is to say, a worldview that includes a Christian perspective on all of the different facets of human learning, whether it be the sciences, literature, art, psychology, history, philosophy, and the deep metaphysical questions. So
I don't know if you noticed this, but this is William Lane Craig telling us that once you're a Christian, you will fold everything around you in order to match your worldview, no matter what. Once you're a Christian, all of a sudden, every fact, every observation, every theory needs to fit your idea that there is a God who created everything. That is all that matters. It means that you now, if needed, can bend deny, ignore, misrepresent everything that we already know to be true if it contradicts your religious beliefs. That is what William Lane Craig calls a synoptic worldview. It means weeding out everything that doesn't fit your religious beliefs. And of course, that is called Christian apologetics, and William Lane Craig made a career out of it. Note that up to now, we haven't heard one single reason, not even a bad reason, why he would be a Christian.
You're correct. When I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the Kalam cosmological argument under John Hick at the University of Birmingham.
Yeah, it keeps amazing me that people can get a doctor's degree by writing a dissertation about some silly argument that proves absolutely nothing and doesn't make the existence of any god more likely in any way. It boggles the mind that academia is willing to invest time and public money into that kind of stuff, while that time and money could have been invested into researching a cure for cancer or whatever. I will never understand those priorities.
One of the things I began to explore was whether there might not be some sort of scientific confirmation for the claim of the Kalam cosmological argument that the universe began to exist.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem with you Christian apologists. You first decide what you want to be true, in this case your silly Kalam cosmological argument for God, and then you desperately try to find clues, usually out of context snippets of science that you don't understand or misrepresent, so that you can imply scientific support for this God idea that is already imprinted in your brain. Real science, of course, works the other way around. We first observe actual facts that we know to be true, because empirical and objective observations and measurements prove it to be true. Then we phrase a hypothesis that we can test, if possible with predictions, in order to get to a theory that explains the facts that we know to be true. Christian apologists usually put the horse behind the carriage. They already have decided what their explanation is. There is a God, and he did it. Now all we have to do is to find some data that does not contradict this idea. So then Christian apologists can triumphantly claim, science proves God, which of course is complete nonsense. But unfortunately, a large portion of the population is scientifically illiterate, and they will just believe anything that fits the indoctrination that they received during childhood. This is how Christianity uses science to perpetuate the same old nonsense that it is proclaiming for centuries now. And Christian apologists like William Lane Craig are the charlatans who commercially exploit this situation.
And I was startled to see the degree to which contemporary astrophysics did support this premise, in no small part because of Professor Penrose's work on the singularity theorems.
Yeah, typical Christian apologist charlatan move. Act as if you agree with real scientists and imply that their work supports your God delusion. Note how Professor Penrose just tries to be polite and can barely refrain from giving William Lane Craig a well-deserved disdain.
In no small part because of Professor Penrose's work on the singularity theorems. Because of Professor Penrose's work on the singularity.
No, Craig, science does not support your God fantasies. There is not one example of a peer-reviewed study in an established scientific journal that proves the existence of any God ever, even not after centuries of scientific research. Your silly religious stories are just void of any way to objectively investigate them, meaning that your God claims are just as useless for truth-finding as a child telling it met an invisible unicorn. What a complete waste of time. I watched a video with the title, William Lane Craig, Why I Am a Christian and Think Science Points to God. And to be honest, not to my surprise, I did not hear any good reason to be a Christian, and not any fact that makes the existence of any God even slightly more probable, which once again demonstrates that the real miracle of Christianity is the fact that it ever got traction in the first place. It's astonishing that so many people in the 21st century still believe the same nonsense that folks believed during medieval times. It's the same old baseless God claims that are not supported by any objectively verifiable evidence. Will this ever change? I surely hope so. If more people started to only believe things that are supported by sufficient and objectively verifiable evidence, the world would spend less time, energy and resources on useless nonsense, making this world a better place to live. Thanks for watching.